Hello everyone. Today we will discuss the rest of scalp. We have already discussed the attachments, layers and the applied aspects related to each layer. So now we have to discuss about nerve supply, the blood supply which includes arterial supply, venous drainage and then the lymphatic drainage. So first we will see the nerve supply. So this is the view from above and this is the anterior part and this is the posterior part. So there are 10 nerves which supply the scalp, out of which 8 are sensory nerves and 2 are motor nerves. Okay. And out of these 10, 5 are in the pre-auricular compartment and 5 in the post-auricular compartment. And out of the 5 in the pre-auricular compartment, 4 are sensory, 1 is motor. Similarly, out of the 5 in the post-auricular compartment, 4 are sensory and 1 is motor. So we will see which are all the sensory nerves and the motor nerves. In the pre-auricular compartment, that is in front of the auricle, from before backwards, we have got supratrochlear nerve, then supraorbital nerve, then zygomaticotemporal nerve, then temporal branch of facial nerve and then auriculotemporal nerve. Okay, and this supratrochlear and supraorbital nerves are branches of frontal nerve derived from the ophthalmic division of trigeminal nerve. We all know the trigeminal nerve, which is the fifth cranial nerve, has got 3 divisions. These are ophthalmic, maxillary and mandibular. And from this ophthalmic division comes the supratrochlear and supraorbital nerve. Whereas zygomaticotemporal nerve is derived from the zygomatic nerve, which is a branch of the maxillary division of trigeminal nerve. Auriculotemporal nerve is from the mandibular division of trigeminal nerve. So here the motor nerve is temporal branch of facial nerve. This temporal branch of facial nerve will supply the frontal belly of occipital frontalis, that we have already discussed in the last session, that the occipital frontalis muscle has got 2 sets of bellies, that is frontal belly in the front and occipital belly behind. The frontal belly is supplied by the temporal branch of the facial nerve. So these are the sets of nerves in front of the auricle. Now behind the auricle we have got 5 sets of nerves. The first one is great auricular nerve. Second one is posterior auricular branch of the facial nerve. Third one is lesser occipital nerve. Then greater occipital nerve and third occipital nerve. This is also arranged from before backwards. Here also before backwards, here also before backwards. Okay, so out of this, the posterior auricular branch of facial nerve is the motor nerve. Greater auricular nerve is derived from C2, C3 of the cervical plexus. Lesser occipital from the C2 of cervical plexus. Greater occipital from C2 of cervical plexus. And third occipital from C3 of the cervical plexus. Whereas the posterior auricular branch is a branch of the facial nerve, and this branch is a motor nerve and it supplies the occipital belly of occipital frontalis. Okay, so similarly on either side we have got these 10 nerves. Okay, now the peculiarity or importance of these nerve supply is that we have seen the nerves are derived from the trigeminal nerve as well as the cervical plexus. So the dermatomes of these 2 sets of nerves overlap considerably. Okay, so while you are performing operations on the scalp, it should be preferably done under general anesthesia, because since these nerves are overlapping, the dermatomes of these nerves are overlapping, the adequate amount of anesthesia might not occur. Okay, the site might not get adequate amount of anesthesia, and also since the subcutaneous tissue of the scalp is thick, since its density is thick, the local anesthesia might not diffuse properly inside. Okay. We have to give general anesthesia for operations of the scalp, preferably. Now we see the arterial supply. So the arteries are 5 in number. Okay, now 3 are in front of the auricle, 2 are behind the auricle. Peculiarity is that here there is a wide communication between the branches of internal carotid and external carotid artery. Okay, so the first one is from before backwards, supratrochlear artery, then supraorbital artery, then superficial temporal artery, then behind the auricle we have posterior auricular artery, and then occipital artery. Okay, out of this, the supratrochlear and supraorbital are indirect branches of internal carotid artery, whereas other 3 are branches of external carotid artery. So the scalp is the site of communication between internal carotid and external carotid artery. The second importance is that we might have seen that superficial temporal artery pulsations can be felt in front of the tragus along the zygomatic arch, and in some conditions like temporal arteritis, these pulsations can be seen properly. Now next is the venous drainage. The veins correspond to the arteries. Okay, so that means there are 5 sets of veins. Similar to the 5 sets of arteries, we have got 5 sets of veins. These are supratrochlear, supraorbital, then superficial temporal, posterior auricular, and occipital. Okay, now the supratrochlear and supraorbital veins, they pass along the medial angle of the eye and joins at the medial angle of the eye to form angular vein, and this pass obliquely downwards and continues as facial vein. Okay. At the same time, the superficial temporal vein joins with the maxillary vein inside the parotid gland, forms retromandibular vein. This retromandibular vein divides into 2 divisions, that is anterior division and posterior division. Okay. This anterior division joins with the facial vein and forms common facial vein, and this drains into internal jugular vein, whereas the posterior division joins with the posterior auricular vein, and this forms external jugular vein, which then drains into subclavian vein, and the occipital vein drains into suboccipital venous plexus. I will repeat this again. The supratrochlear and supraorbital veins at the medial angle of eye, they join together and forms angular vein, which passes obliquely downwards and forms facial vein. Okay. The superficial temporal vein joins with the maxillary vein to form the retromandibular vein. This retromandibular vein divides into 2 divisions, that is anterior and posterior division. Anterior division joins with the facial vein, and these together form the common facial vein that drains into internal jugular vein, whereas the posterior division retromandibular vein joins with the posterior auricular vein, and that forms the external jugular vein, and that drains into subclavian vein. Okay. Now the occipital vein drains into suboccipital venous plexus. So that is all about the venous drainage. The importance of the venous drainage is that the scalp veins are used for intravenous infusion in children, because these veins, especially the supratrochlear, supraorbital, superficial temporal, posterior auricular, these veins are having a constant position. So these are helpful for intravenous infusions in children. Okay, that's all about the venous drainage. Now, other than this, there are 2 sets of veins that is known as the emissary veins and diploic veins. So we have already seen emissary veins in the last session, that is these connect the scalp veins with the intracranial venous sinuses. So the emissary veins are basically of 2 sets, that is parietal veins and mastoid veins. Okay, and then comes the diploic veins. Diploic veins are basically 2 types, that is frontal diploic vein and occipital diploic vein. Okay. Now, next is the lymphatic drainage. The anterior group of lymph vessels drain into the superficial parotid lymph nodes, the preauricular region. Whereas the posterior group, the posterior part of the scalp, the anterior part of the scalp into the superficial parotid, posterior part into the postauricular or the mastoid lymph nodes or the occipital lymph nodes. Okay, so these are all about the lymphatic drainage. Importance of lymphatic drainage is that in case of infections or infestations like of lice, or the scalp, these lymph nodes get enlarged. Okay, so that's all about the scalp. We have discussed about the various layers, attachments, then the various applied aspects related to the various layers, then the nerve supply, arterial supply, venous drainage, lymphatic drainage. So we can remember a rule of 5 here because the scalp has got 5 layers. The fourth layer has got 5 applied aspects, that is, the fourth layer is very important and it has got 5 applied aspects. These are, it is also known as a dangerous layer of the scalp, then black eye, caput sexurinum, then safety valve hematoma, traumatic cephalohydrosis that we have already discussed in the last section. Now and again, there are 10 nerves, 5 preauricular and 5 postauricular, then 5 arteries, 5 veins that is corresponding to the arteries. Okay, now I'll show you some of the pictures of the various applied aspects that we have already discussed. Now, I would like to discuss some important questions. Scalp as such is a very important essay question, usually asked for 10 marks. And other than that, the nerve supply, arterial supply, venous drainage, all these diagrams are separately asked, and it's a common question for Viva. So, I'll discuss some of the questions. Which is the dangerous layer of the scalp? We have already discussed the fourth layer is a dangerous layer because it contains the emissary veins. It has got a potential space. These emissary veins communicate with the scalp veins to the intracranial venous sinuses, and if any infection occurs in this region, the pus accumulated will get transmitted to the intracranial venous sinuses. That is known as the fourth layer is known as the dangerous layer of the scalp. Why inflammation is highly painful in the second layer? Okay. I have already discussed second layer is a closed network of subcutaneous tissue. Here there is unyielding reticulum of the fibrous tissue. Because of this, any inflammation occurring in this region is very painful because of the unyielding reticulum of the fibrous tissue. Okay. Now, why surgery in the scalp is preferred under general anesthesia? That we have already discussed in this section itself. That is due to the overlap of the dermatomes of trigeminal and the cervical plexus, trigeminal nerve and the cervical plexus, and also since the density of the subcutaneous tissue of the scalp is thick, the local anesthesia won't diffuse much inside. Therefore, general anesthesia is preferred. Now, the reason for black eye, I have already told the last session. Black eye occurs due to orbital bone injury. And because of no bony attachments of the frontalis muscle that we have seen, there is no bony attachment. The blood can seep through the subcutaneous tissue and cause it accumulates under the eyelids, causing the black eye. Now, the difference between caput sexurinum and cephalohematoma. So, we have seen caput sexurinum is a condition in the fourth layer. Cephalohematoma is a condition related to the fifth layer. Okay. So, caput sexurinum, it is a temporary condition, temporary edematous swollen condition, whereas the cephalohematoma is kind of not temporary because it takes a period of a few months to resolve. The caput sexurinum occurs due to interference of the venous return during the passage of fetal head through the birth canal. Okay, occurs during the delivery only due to the interference of the venous return, whereas cephalohematoma occurs with the rupture of emissary veins, especially while doing forceps delivery. When we are using the forceps for delivering out the fetal head, rupture of emissary veins occurs. Then caput saxilenium is a diffuse swelling. It does not take the shape of the bone, whereas the cephalohematoma, this lies under the periosteum. Okay, under the periosteum and the bone. So it takes the shape of the bone. It is it is limited by the sutural line. So it takes the shape of the bone. So that is the main difference between cephalohematoma and caput saxilenium. Okay, so I hope you understood this topic. If you haven't subscribed this channel, please do subscribe and please press the bell icon to get more notifications. And please like and share this video. Thank you.